Did you know that in Chinese medicine that the heart and the small intestine are yin and yang paired organs? So in the Chinese medical world, your organs are paired as in yin and yang. So you have 12 major meridian pathways. You have 8 extraordinary pathways, but we're not speaking about that in this video. That goes deeper into your esoteric side as far as fate versus destiny, the 8 extraordinary channels. When you're trying to understand your body's helix and your DNA level of understanding when it comes to health and wellness, physiognomy, getting into the metaphysics as far as healthcare is concerned, that's when you tap into the 8 extraordinary channels. But just as exciting, the 12 major meridians are each attributed to a major and a minor organ. And when I say major and minor, I basically mean yin or yang paired. So yang meaning exterior or hollow or more functional in this perspective, and yin would be considered more physiological. So the heart is considered the yin pair, and the small intestine is considered the yang pair. The easiest anatomical way that I could describe it, if you've ever seen a heart, the actual organ, the anatomy of an organ unraveled, because it's like a tight clenched fist, and it's not like how people think it is. Yes, it's like yin and yang and the gathering of the divine feminine and masculine, yes, but actually anatomically it's an actual raveled up like helix. When you unravel it, it becomes like this, like, I don't want to say it looks like a colon, but when you look at a heart unraveled physically, you actually have to unravel it like as in a human cadaver. If you go on YouTube or if you go on Google, you would see that the heart is not what you think it is if you're not a student of anatomy and physiology. And when you unravel it, you can almost see anatomically how you can relate the heart to the small intestine in comparison. So from a Chinese medical perspective, your heart is what houses your shen, which is your spirit, and your soul, using the 5-element theory, is subcategorized into 5 aspects. And I would like to make another video on that for those who are not familiar with the 5-element theory. It goes hand in hand with the yin and yang theory as far as comparison is concerned. Not just differential diagnosis or diagnoses in plural when you're working on a client or a patient, if you're an acupuncturist or an herbalist or whatnot, but also if you're like a kung fu teacher, a real one, you actually use a layman's version of yin and yang theory and 5-element theory to help to bring up somebody's physical prowess in the qigong world, whether it's like hard kung fu or soft kung fu, the same, whether it's tai chi or whether it's xing yi, bagua, honga, you know, yin jiao pai, Fu Jiao Pai, all these cool martial arts. I wish I could study them all in one lifetime. They're like so awesome. But Chinese masters and sifus, meaning like teachers, have been famous for not only teaching how to injure and maim as far as self-defense, but they've been known to help to heal and to cure the person that they've injured quite often. They were the ones that were also like the Chinese doctors, not just acupuncturists, but they could have been herbalists, or they could have been ditta, jiao practitioners, meaning like using like trauma liniments and whatnot, and poultices and bone healing and bone setting doctors. This is like a real thing. And to be honest, these actual, even the laymen, as far as like these practitioners in the medical arts, they actually have been more beneficial, from my experiences alone, I mean, than like more allopathic sense of medical practitioners. A lot of these practitioners, especially when I was growing up in the martial arts community between like the 80s and 90s, a lot of these Kung Fu students in Chinatown, because I trained up in, I was in Patterson, New Jersey, but I would oftentimes go to Chinatown when I was young. And then in my 20s, I kept training within my system in Chinatown, New York. And so you hear it and you experience and you meet people, and you're just part of the whole Kung Fu community or whatnot if you decide to plug in that way. And I met many students that had all kinds of broken bones from like martial art injuries and whatnot, or even like autoimmune disease. You'd be surprised. And almost all of them went to like Kenny Gong, which is my Qigong, which is my grandfather teacher. He was like, in my opinion, the most respected man in Chinatown for his Xing Yi Chuan, and also as a Weiker acupuncture and Chinese herbalist, Sifu and master. And I met actual patients that were long-term, actual students of his that were also long-term patients, and they would give me their testimony, and it gave me a lot of confidence, especially when I was like an acupuncture student. It allowed me to create more of a faith of knowing that I was getting into the right path as far as being an acupuncturist, because I had my questions for myself. I knew acupuncture was very powerful, but I was like afraid. I had my natural fears that I wouldn't be that person to be able to really help someone else, because your biggest opponent is yourself, right? And I'm a big opponent, you know. So it's not easy. It was challenging as far as that's concerned. So in essence, when your Shen is balanced, it means mind, body, spirit, you're in complete harmony, you're in symphony, you are in complete balance with your life every day. Means that your emotional state body is refined to such a way within your travels as a human being, right? That, and I mean in theory, right? Because a lot of us, it's not that easy arriving there, right? But that means that your spirit is housed correctly in your Shen. That means your spirit feels safely in that means that your Shen is feeling safely in your heart. So the way it was taught is that your house is almost like the housing to where your spirit resides. When your spirit feels at peace, and when it trusts you as a physical person, when it trusts your somatic system, when it trusts your etheric body, right? When it trusts your lymphatic system and your endocrine system, such as your hormones is concerned, that's your endocrine system. When all of that is working optimally, then your Shen does not feel disturbed from a Chinese medical perspective. So your Shen resides in the middle elixir, or the middle dantian, or the middle jiao of your body, which is basically where your heart is, and you would say your heart chakra. When your heart is disturbed, when your spirit is disturbed, is through external or internal trauma, trials, tribulations, that's not acute. It's when it becomes chronic, and due to its chronicity of all kinds, and also based on the examples that I mentioned, as far as like maybe medical, as far as like an issue with your endocrine system, issues with your lymphatic system, which is often not diagnosed in allopathic medicine. It's almost everybody's issue. Actually, you can actually cure maybe 90% of all acute and chronic pathology just by paying attention and using your lymphatic system as a gauge from a Western perspective. And it's amazing how your body will just self-heal. If you look at cleaning up your entire lymphatic and glymphatic vessel, which is the lymphatic extension within the brain. So the brain has an extended part of the lymphatic system in the brain, which it's almost like the sewage system, and it cleans up your entire body, or stores things that's trying to protect it from entering, like toxicity and stuff and wastes per se. So let's say all of that is functioning and in balance, right? And you're like this optimal human being. Your heart and your Shen is in synchronicity, and you know, because you walk as an open heart, and your aura changes, right? You know that because when you smile, the whole room lights up. Or when you smile, people start disliking you because you shift the room with people who have negative or contrasting energies, because you will shine. That's a heart person or a fire person. When the Shen is disturbed, then one school of thought in classics, and I wish I could remember the actual books that I can actually confirm. I would have to like research it to remember. Then your spirit begins to go into the upper registry of your mind, which is like your conscious thoughts. Think of anxiety, think of fight or flight mode, think of overthinking and whatnot. That's when your spirit and your Shen is in disharmony. So once you kind of like in this school of thought, balance out your physical vessel, and you start having an inner dialogue with your actual spirit and Shen, then your Shen naturally comes back home. It's like coming back to your heart. So there goes the kind of like the psycho-spiritual connection to the body system, such as your somatic system, because a lot of people are becoming more knowledgeable now and understanding their nervous system and their somatic system. But it's nothing in life is black and white. So the beauty of Chinese medicine, because it's over 5,000 years evolved, there's so many levels of complexities that make up your entire physical system, and it's not separate from the spiritual system, and it's not separate from the emotional system, and it's not separate between the spirit or the soul. And yet there's subcomponents and compartments that actually diversify, let's say, the aspect of your soul. So that if you're a practitioner of any sort, you know, you're this yoga or qigong practitioner, and you're an educator, then you can actually like pattern differentiate somebody's imbalance, because you can go so deep and refined if you're that kind of a practitioner using this school of thought. So now that I softened up this school of thought as to how this acupuncture practitioner thinketh, having the animals here, like having a good time with me here, or birds or whatever that is. Sorry, I get easily distracted when I'm in the woods or I'm out with nature. Well, I can argue distractions are my way of making sure that I'm anchored. That's just the way I anchor. Even in the middle of making this video, oh my goodness. So it's not easy walking with no filters because, you know, I'm trying to have a new conversation with my new way and not sounding or appearing so weird, especially if you've never met me. If you met me, then it's worse. But on video, come on, you know, I don't want to make it that complex and challenging for you, you know. I don't want you to like me for the wrong reasons, you know. So anyway, back on topic. So same thing with the small intestine. So the heart would be considered the yin, like yin and yang. And the small intestine would be the yang. So it'd be like the electromagnetic paired frequency as in circuitry, if you look at it like that. So I call it chi dynamics, but if you actually go to acupuncture school, they just simplify and they just say the chi. You know, they'll just say your chi. And so I would speak that way right now. So the chi between your heart and your small intestine is like positive and negative. So I would say the yin as in divine feminine, and the yang would be the divine masculine, the functional aspect of excreting. However, the small intestine is so overlooked, it actually can be taken upon more important than your heart. Actually, it is, even in the Vedic system, because in order for you to start raising up your vibration, all the way up from your solar plexus to your right, all the way up to the higher frequencies of your, not just your sensory systems of perceiving and smelling, but even more refined, right? That's beyond the 7, right? That the 7 exposes the hidden 8 as a numeracy. So once you open up the 7 chakras or the 7 energy centers, I love to say the 7 keys of your inner harmonics, and then you start opening up the 8, and the 8 is actually saying two senses of completion of completion of yin and yang, where it's just like two divine forces creating the infinite. But then if you think about it, it's actually one at the same time. Because if you take that circle and you go like that, like a helix, then you understand that in its non-separation, yin and yang, or divine feminine and masculine, they're just working in a different sense of harmonics. Because for something like this to be created, then you have to understand the dimensions and changes of density from something that's dense and complete, if you're looking in the 3D way. And for it to start to evolve and change, if you're not doing it with your hands but energetically, then you want to get into like the study of cymatics per se, as far as how sound music will change the frequency and harmonics. For such a frequency to change the pattern of a circle to an 8, a vortex, right, or a helix, and then it's mental separation. That's why you have men and women separated here in this world. So we live in a mental separation unit, and that's why our brains are kind of like separated, right, and whatnot. And we were kind of like designed in this experiment or experience, depending how you want to see it, to live in separation, because this is how you start understanding the fragments of your entire wholeness, yet you're separated being your individual sense of self. So it's like living as a man completely and seeing my counterpart all over this world as mirrors every single female that I see out there as far as yin and yang is concerned, right? Biological gender. Then I start to reflect who I'm not. And then I start to try to understand who am I. And if you're into like divine feminine, divine masculine, and not so much gender, but like the feminine within me, then you start to reflect on how you were hopefully maybe raised by your mom. And there was an upright sense of how she raised you in a nurturing sense, being a male. And that's how I start to understand my separation. Because as I start to get older, I'm separated from my mom once again. From the placenta, from embryo, I'm separated once, right? Then I'm separated twice when I start to go to school, right? And I'm separated again if I decide to get married, right? And like this, like kind of like logical, rational way of thinking in the mind of a guy, because this is how guys actually commonly think. It may not be consciously, and they may not speak like that, but there's a almost like a hierarchical, rational way of a supported way of putting things together. And if you see it that way, then you can see how a human could have been created in the logical way, as far as these mad scientists that can clone. And I'm not talking about like if this is like awesome or if this is horrible. I'm not a fan of this at all. But again, that's in its divineness, the ability to do that and to understand, that would be the divine masculine. Somebody to be able to understand and honor something in its purity. So I'm purely a man, then this is purely a woman. And purely, if you start making a scientific research between a man and a woman, and then you can purely see if you can create a baby. Right? And so you're honoring the purity of being a man. You're honoring the purity of being a woman. And this is how an actual man thinks within his lower mind, within his survival, within his not so much intuition, but what births intuition is instincts, right? Reproduction means survival, to attempt to thrive. To be in complete harmonics and bliss means that you've mastered that. So men always want to create a sense of stability, right? And I keep saying this, why? Because this is what separates now the heart from the small intestine. The diaphragm is a physical separation, just such as you have a physical, scientific, biological separation with your brain, the same. You know, yeah, this and that. And so anything kind of like in a basic layman's term that's below the diaphragm is working on what? Simplistics. Taking all of the sewage from your lymphatic system, and your small intestine does what? Your small intestine is seen in Chinese medicine as the librarian of your body. Doesn't want to have to think. I can think of a master librarian who's done all this research, and he or she has the ability to, like, if you go to a librarian who's been in that library for a long time, they'll if you ask them where to find this, you know, if you ask them where's this book per se, or where's this article, if they don't have an answer, they're going to know how to allocate it through the system, through the computer. But most likely they'll just walk with you and just say, yeah, they probably even read it, right? So a library doesn't have to think anymore. It's just like 1, 2, and 3. That's a healthy small intestine. See, a small intestine, unlike the stomach, doesn't want to or should not hold. 20-something feet of small intestine is not designed to hold food. That's called stasis or stagnation. That's called being constipated. That's called being bloated. That's called being a lot of things like that, right? It wants to move, but in this process of moving, it's always assimilating and it's always allocating. So when food and drink, water, energetics enter the small intestine, it's like the librarian. Poop goes to the poop, pee goes to the pee, so it goes to the large intestine, to the bladder, or the kidneys into the bladder. And also, it assimilates. If you're dehydrated or if you require more energy, it will actually take the food that's decomposed or decomposing, and it will actually assimilate more nutrition within that organ, particularly so. So it's always constantly working that way, very intelligently. So arguably, if you have a very strong small intestine, very strong, and you lead as a small intestine person, which is in the fire category within the 5 element theory, that's a fire person, and that's a fire person that actually it's like the librarian. They make great managers, they make great leaders, because they can work cool, breezy, and when they stagnate, they're gonna give you diarrhea. They're not going to allow stagnation to occur because they're thinking in a form that's too high for the logical thinking mind. So if you start to think like a small intestine, then it'd be crazy for your conscious mind. You would not be able to think and even see this video. It'd be too crazy. It would be beyond survival. So this is why you have your conscious, subconscious, and your unconscious mind, so that you can have almost like a seemingly separation between your entire process as a human being. But we tend to think that what we're experiencing just through the conscious mind, that's why I always say boxed in through the conscious mind, that's where we're like only 1/3 there. That's only like a percentage of us. That's not holistically all of us. So I'm explaining all of this because it's important for all of us that are becoming more educated and more aware, and they're coming outside of the box, to start to understand, just by understanding your own anatomy, your own physiology, beyond what the books teach. You're made divinely powerful and beautiful, and just by tapping into this type of knowledge, the insight will actually open up more DNA, latent DNA, strands that are kind of like in latency or at a pulse. And when you open up to such education in your way, especially if you found this video, this is the harmonics, this is the sound, this is the frequency, this is the vibration. It changes a certain chemistry in your brain, because there are certain aspects of you that was waiting through the life of, or the living of uncertainty, for you to be able to unravel something. And you always had the keys and you're walking around like this video game called Zelda that I used to love to play, Zelda. I don't know if you ever played that. And you're like playing this game, and it's like so easy to play, but you don't know how to master it because you don't want to read this thick instruction booklet. And I never even knew the nature of the game. Anyway, so as you're playing, you're picking up all of these valuable keys, items, and potions and things, and you're putting into your bag, or weapons and whatnot, or you're getting stronger, and you're meeting all these like sages and whatnot, and these people, and not everybody has the best interest in your hand. But even if they don't, you learn not to go into that neighborhood. So it's the same thing in your life, that game Zelda. And as you start tripling, falling, and dying so many times, you've died so many times in this life, in this video game, that eventually you start to put it together, and you start to understand that it wasn't meant for you to play the game. You were actually the one creating the game, but you forgot in this story. So your small intestine and your subconscious and your unconscious is doing all of that remembrance for you, and it's working accordingly so that your conscious mind can be simply the vehicle. So to tap into your subconscious and your unconscious mind, if you haven't been doing the work, the best way I can explain it is, well, not the best way, but one way that comes to mind right now is you're driving your car. You got your car, got your used car, paid it out, and you're driving, and like, you pay somebody to understand the hood of the car, of how it works, right? You don't necessarily know exactly how your car is running. So that's why you get your how do you say, your oil change, and you get your mechanics done by the mechanic, especially new agey people who are not studying to be mechanics. And that's kind of like that part of the aspect of the car is the subconscious part. And then the unconscious part are the manufacturers of the car and all of the behind the scenes stuff that you didn't even think about, the corporate side of it, the way money works, supply demand. And there's like this other kind of like algorithm in this 3D way of seeing as to how you even was able to even have this car made, and for you to have the ability to buy a car, right? So that's the unconscious aspects, right? And that's how deep your waters run. And we're just talking about like a 3D logical way of teaching, as if I was going to, if I was a teacher and I was going to start teaching 3rd and 4th graders, this is how we should be teaching them. Not this way, but we should start opening up their minds, not teaching them like 99% of the crap that they're learning. Not when they're young. So going beyond the 3D somatic, etheric aspects of your small intestine and your heart connection, the small intestine could care less what it requires to digest. It just knows that if it makes sense to the small intestine, it's going to digest it, because again, it's going to have a clean, quiet house, right? Small intestine, like a librarian, gets pissed off. You're going to get rumbling stomach if you eat something really quick. Food poisoning is no joke. Actually, if you get food poisoning right away and it hurts strong and you kind of like projectile vomit really quick, actually means you're very healthy. That means that your body discarded it, and you minimalistically will have like food poisoning effects that instead of lasting 1 or 2 weeks or 3-4 days, it maybe lasted anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And you may say, well, that's not healthy. Actually, that is very healthy. Your small intestine was not playing, as an example. It could have been your stomach too, right? If your stomach's functioning healthy. But it could also have been the small intestine saying, stomach, we are not digesting that one. And small intestine smells it. So that's when you start understanding how chi works, as far as how your organs can, they're actual entities. They're their own frequencies. They have their own evolution process. Yet you are beautifully interlaced, interwoven into this harmonics of this creation, where everything in your body works harmoniously. Even the aspects of you that are not working harmoniously, let's say you do have an autoimmune disease, but if you're still breathing, living, and you're able to see this video and this flesh body aspect, you are working in harmony somehow, because your disharmony is attempting to keep you alive. Because there's an aspect of you that may be karmic, but it may be that you're not paying attention to, and you're just being hard-headed. Or maybe you're ill-informed, but being ill-informed and not changing that is still being hard-headed, right? Because you're not going outside the box. And it could be you're hard-headed because you're afraid. You're afraid to go outside the box, or maybe your circumstances are like that, right? So, but if you're hardwired, I say hard-headed, but if your head is hardwired not to, even in fright, not to change your circumstances, then that's what happens to your body. Your body starts getting louder and screaming at you louder, because that's not your strength. Your strength is not to stay hardwired into like even a traumatic situation. In general, that's just how your body works in surviving and being instinctually intelligent. So the emotions that enter your heart, right? The blood that enters your heart. Many are saying now that the heart is not a pump of the blood, but an actual electromagnetic vessel. I think the pacemaker of the heart, that's the anatomical term of the muscle tissue that creates the electrical spark that pumps the contraction, the expansion and contraction of the heart, right? Of the four chambers of your heart, that gets the heart blood actually moving through that helix is actually charging your blood. The heart is activating, charging it in a healthy individual, and now it gets allocated to every single aspect of your body via the arteries, the vessels, and then the capillary vessels all the way up to all the way to a cellular level. So the blood is the carrier on a molecular and even on a nanoscale as far as how it transports vital life force energy, even undefined vital life force energy. I didn't research this, so I'm going at the top of my head, but I think they call it free energy. So when you completely digest food, the completely digested aspect of the energy that you actually receive, that's actual nutrition. It's not the food, it's not the protein, it's not the copper, it's not the zinc. All those minerals actually go back down into the earth again. They get recycled. It was the energy that it was holding, like a magnet. And then your body receives the energy. It sucks in the energy within its within its cellular structure, within its internal digestive system, because each cell in your body has its own digestive system. Each cell. So as each cell poops out into your entire lymphatic system, this is why I said prior to in this video, if you take care of your lymphatic system, you're saying to each cell in your body, every single cell, whether it's your skin, your organs, your eyes, even your blood, you're saying to them, I love you and I'm cleaning house for you. Actually, your mind is so strong, as soon as you start thinking like that, you decide to do a little research. It's not the research, it's that you attracted it because now it makes sense to you. And it became conscious to you, as an example, right? It happens to me all the time. There's something that I've known my whole life and it stayed in my subconscious mind. And all of a sudden, I hear somebody say it as if it's the first time, but they re-sparked something in me that I loved about it, and I kept it in the back burner. And all of a sudden, if I get a chance, I'm going to say thank you to that person, because they are the ones that sparked something of an essence with me, and that was their purpose. Maybe that's the only reason I met that person. Maybe it was just like a 2-second conversation, and they were my earth angel for that 2 seconds. And that was actual nutrition. That was actual an energy exchange. So going back to what I was saying is that they call it free energy, I think, if I'm not mistaken. There's like an energy force that's taken, and please let me know if you know the name of that free energy within the field of biology. If there's like another term for it. I didn't research it, so I will when I get a chance. And that free energy, it's like saying it's not defined, but yet they characterize it and they know it exists. It has its own energy hold. Right? It has its own measurable energy hold. And that energy transitions and alchemizes into your system. Being that you're an energy being, you're an electrical being, you're also a magnetic being. And this is how you receive your nutrition, through food. And this is how you can understand how more vital nutrition would be through the sun and through earthing. And through the actual earth by grounding, not being with rubber shoes, not being always driving in a vehicle like a car all the time because you're living in the United States, let's say, and you're always in rubber, and sometimes grounding 1 hour 2 or 3 times a week may not be enough. The more you start self-educating, the more you start to align within yourself, because the more you become aware, as I said, like that person, like I'm like that person to you, let's say, or you may be that person to me when you reach out to me privately and you give me, you kind of like transport information on my end. So there's always this energy exchange that once it becomes conscious to you, it's like sending a message to your subconscious that you cannot ignore. If you try to ignore it, because now you know it's vital for your health, as an example, this is how you can actually become sick all of a sudden. This is like why if you met me and I tell you this is good for you because you asked me a legitimate question, or this is what you need to heal, and then all of a sudden you may get sicker because you didn't follow me, follow my plans, or you didn't seek acupuncture with me afterwards, or you didn't go seek distance healing with me afterwards, and then you find yourself even worse a couple days to a couple of weeks later after meeting me. These are true, actual stories. And you can say, like, what's wrong with this guy? Is he like a hex maker? No, it's not that. It's that because our energy field is actually connected, something made conscious to you, and those are your guides speaking to you. I was just a vessel. I may not even have been conscious of all this. And And now you're like saying, now I'm going to put that back in my subconscious, even though your subconscious made it conscious to you. And you're like, nope, I'm going to push that right back into my small intestine. I'm going to put that back into my gut. And your gut is like saying, I'm going to make you sicker. This goes back and ties back to the beginning of the story. My gut says, I'm going to make you sicker, because the gut biome, the physical, emotional biome of your gut, each organ has its own emotional body, because it's the emotional state of your organs actually is what keeps it moving, to keeping it in homeostasis. It will attempt to digest or excrete or to stagnate and to hold, like as in tumor or as in nodule, as in cyst, as in a boil. Arthritis. That's your body's attempt in harboring and holding something, because you're not paying attention that by the time you got the arthritic response, no, it wasn't from an injury. That's a fallacy. That'll be another talk. It wasn't from an old injury. No, that's not true. Not true. I'll do another talk on that one. I don't want to get into that. It's another one. That's actually a miracle of your body once you start understanding your pain body experience, that there's something that you need to connect so that you can kind of like retract and find out how you got there and see it from an algorithm point of view, almost like you're actually the programmer or the creator of your own sickness. You say you didn't do it, but your body actually had to, in its biological state, had to give it permission. It had to. And it's the only way it's going to work, because if it didn't give it permission and you didn't want the experience, then your body would have like frozen. It's like, that's when you start getting trauma and you're like, no, I'm not going to get it. And this is like when you're seeing a lot of the kids right now in other countries during wartime. I hate to mention it, but it's like I have to talk about it. It's horrible, and a lot of these kids are spazzing out and they're just going into complete shock. That's actually healthy for them. And that's actually healthy because they're locking in their entire neurovascular and neurology to attempt to shield themselves from extra trauma that will make them so sick within their 20s, 30s, and 40s. We're talking about like the little kids. And this is a way of like pushing out, because a lot of these kids were born even in that trauma to be warriors of our future. In Palestine and Iran and all of these places that are unspoken and unheard of, where these wars have been happening for a long time. Now we're finally starting to wake up to these wars due to social media and due to the awakening of people and due to the evolution of Mother Earth ascending. A lot of the heavier dark forces that kept things like blind to our five senses, the veil is now starting to thin, and that's why now people who have a heart understands that we have to be human. Never mind religion, never mind culture, never mind all of that stuff. It's that it's within humanity. I see a child, that's why I can't look at social media. I see a child out there, I'll be really quick, that's suffering. My whole body will shut down, because it's like as if it's my child. It's like it's a version of me. And then if you're like an empath, you become that child. You know, you become, even if you never had kids, you become that mother or father, and you will absorb all of their suffering. Now imagine several million children. So this is how you would not be beneficial if you tap into all of this news, because then your actual biology, your somatic nervous system will receive through all of the five sensory systems and your sixth sense and your seventh hidden sense. I have a video on that. Your seventh hidden sense. All of those senses will actually receive anything conscious or unconscious, even if you say I don't want to hear it, but it's like me playing loud music that I don't like, and I'm still in that atmosphere where I can still hear it, and I'm still saying I'm not hearing it. I'm still absorbing the frequency, and that frequency goes straight into my DNA. Actually, you could say I don't, hallelujah, I'm praying against this music, it's demonic, ha 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 ha. But if you don't actually make an actual it's like a prayer, become the living prayer by exiting out and speaking to yourself and saying no, or alchemizing that harmonics, if you know how to alchemize it and turn it into something else, then what happens is that the intention of the people who created that song, again, that song that you don't like, will enter your DNA and it will alter it. It may not be altering it direct, but it can alter in contrast. It can alter it and re-encode certain aspects of your DNA, oftentimes depending on your human experience and your signature agreements as to why you're here and why you're incarnating here. So it's different to everyone, but this is a great example. So I'm saying all of this because this is all related to your heart and your small intestine. Come on. I know I look like I'm going on tangents, but come on, it means something. It always means something in the end. because the small intestine is the yang part of the heart, when the heart is receiving trauma such as a heartbreak, this is the best example, is when you receive a real heartbreak, which if most of us are lucky, we experienced it once or twice or even 3 times, because this is how you actually esoterically crack open your heart. Because if you have to have your heart broken, and even in the worst way, and you're a strong soul and you're meant to evolve and you're doing the work, this is how you start breaking open, and you start to penetrate through the falsified sense of the synthetic matrix and the false hologram that has been embedded and imprinted into your DNA experience. And the way you suffer and the way you even feel betrayed, or maybe you're the one doing the betraying and you're starting to have an awakening, the same. It takes 2. That's what I'm trying to say. It always takes 2. That dance between the 2 is one of the most powerful dances during this time within the 3D, because if that trauma doesn't physically kill you, because it can, suicide, I'm not discrediting all that, but if it doesn't, in your lowest form, that's when you start going into what you've been keeping sleeping. Is because why did you even have to allow yourself to be the person doing the betraying or being betrayed in the first place? What led you to that? Because for you to have that, it's because there's something in you that always attracts that. Because for you to have to repel it, you have to first attract it to be able to have to repel it. And that's just basically how energy works. This is not a state of opinion. This is just how energy is. If you don't have the magnetic or the electrical or the the frequency of that particular experience, there's no way you could attract it. Actually, if you attract it, like I said before, oh Marcus, you look horrible with your long hair. I could care less, because I'm not doing it for my looks. Or am I? I'm not doing it for my looks. I do it because I know what my hair is. I know that the hair is the end of your nervous system. Beyond, and I know what it does in my inner state when I'm in my meditative state. And I know what this means to me. I don't have to open up books in Egypt. I don't have to do all that, and I respect and honor that. But I'm the book. This is my journey in this life, and this is what I needed to do. I needed to plug in, and I say this wholeheartedly because I love when I meet other people who are living the same way, and because I work in that and walk in that frequency, I meet them all the time. When I didn't. Or when I wasn't honoring my frequency, I didn't meet any of these people. It had nothing to do with the place I travel to, because I go to places that are so obscure, and yet you you see them trickling in. Again, just like your entire venous system, you have your arteries, you have your veins, and you have your capillary vessels, and you have your I forgot the smallest aspects of your capillary vessels, where even just only one simple red blood cell can enter at a time by the time it enters your cell and within your capillary vessels. So think of your blood, right? You have all this viscous blood, and then it's only one blood at a time can enter those capillary vessels and your within your articulations and your of your arms and your legs, your extremities, right? Your 4 major extremities. So again, if you're in an obscure place and you're within the vasculature of Mother Earth, it's like saying you're in a capillary vessel of Mother Earth. It's not separate. It's not separate. And so I might not see them everywhere, just like if I was in New Jersey or in Arizona, where if I'm sitting in a cafe per se, then it's I'm seeing 3 or 4 people a day if I hang out there doing some work in a cafe, and you're meeting all kinds of people that resonate as far as my frequency. But if I'm here in the woods, well, again, I'm still in the circulatory system, but I'm only going to see one person every 2 or 3 days, but I still see them every 2 or 3 days. And once you start seeing that, then you start to understand how your entire energy system, how it's very important to understand that, because then you start opening up the microscopic map to the macroscopic experience out there. And then you start finding it's like a way of asking for the new aspects to download within your avatar, your vessel, so that you can unfold the new spiritual technology that has already upgraded into our system. And one of them is, the major one is Christ consciousness. It's an actual frequency that exists. The trumpets, only those that are aware enough to hear the trumpets. The trumpets was a key code. Only those that can hear the changes. It's a symbol, but it's also a code to understand that you have to understand energy, frequency, and harmonics. And once you fine-tune your harmonics within your system, It's no longer esoteric, it's no longer a mystery, and it's no longer just being a person of wisdom. Now you become kind of like the scientist of your experience, because you have no choice but to walk now with this purely grateful, curious energy of wanting to keep going deeper and like not bypassing, but having had graduated life and death and dying, because now when you're called to go to like one of those obscure, isolated, maybe dangerous areas of this world, because the ley line and the grid structure or the acupuncture point of that particular place, such as in Haiti, is so powerful. And you're like, but I don't know anybody in Haiti. But you're being told to go there somehow. You have to go there. You have to trust. And your curiosity will always, if you're working in the higher realm, your curiosity will always make the decision, because your curiosity up here versus your curiosity below you, your lower chakras versus your higher, will always choose what makes sense in the moment. Again, I'm using this as an example. And once you choose that, you're always going to be in alignment. So you go there, and then you make these important connections. You go there, and then we're connecting. You find me in a certain weird place, and now we're like training in Qigong, you know? And while I'm teaching you something that's valuable to me, you're showing me something that's valuable to you. And that becomes currency. That becomes wealth, because you're living wealthy. If you're in this earth, you're wealthy already. You're abundant. There's nothing to pray for, but if you're praying for it, then you're searching for it. That just means that you're in your process and you're in your lower mind. And most likely I'm not attracting those kind of people within this video, and that got led to this conversation that long, to this extent of this video. So I'm not speaking to them. I'm not speaking to the majority of people. So the small intestine, will receive the trauma of the heart, heartburn, heartbreak, and then not having an appetite, or having a major appetite. Again, it could be the stomach, but again, the stomach in relationship to the small intestine, when you understand the connection between the heart and the small intestine, and if you see the fire of that connection, then you will understand the water of your body as far as organ relationship is concerned, and you will like start understanding the kidneys and the adrenal glands and the bladder, and those organs are the water frequency that balances out the fire of what the small intestine produces or needs to produce to continue with this chemistry, this internal biochemistry of digesting your food even further. Right, taking all these secretions from the pancreas, the gallbladder, and whatnot. And if you eat meat, as an example, or anything, if you eat anything, and you have to break down simple or complex carbohydrates, these are like complex patterns. Or maybe there's something that you cannot digest, and your small intestine has to understand how to make it not go through your urethra, right? I'm just talking about the intelligences of the small intestine. It's not thinking, it's just doing now. It's just doing. It's just sending it out through your large intestine. It's obviously, it's too big for it to be excreted out of your skin, which is your largest organ in your body, right? Such as when you're detoxing, right? The small intestine will send out the message. Did you know that 70% of your small intestine, the immune system per se, is created in, around, or out on the outskirts of your small intestine? So a healthy small intestine means a healthy way, WEI, as an immune system chi, or immunal response to keeping your body in regulation. And there was a Japanese study that was taught to us by Sensei and Master Kiko Matsumoto. She was the one that taught us Japanese acupuncture, world-renowned. Her style, by the way, was taught at Harvard Medical School by her ex-husband, David Euler, for about 20 years. He just retired about a year ago. I've been fortunate to have trained under her. And I used to even teach that particular study. I was fortunate and graced to have been asked to teach certain classes, both beginners and advanced classes in the Kiko system. She spoke about a Japanese study, a long-standing study. I can't find it anywhere. If I find it, I'll post it. I have to do the work to find the actual study. But the study says the cilia or the villi of the small intestine, the little hairy-like structure of the endothelial side of the small intestine, of the inner walls, they say that physical death actually shows its signs there. That when the villi or the cilia, I always confuse the two, when it starts to die or wither or get weak, then the assimilation process also weakens and dies. And they say that's how, within the study, it's been showing the connection of how you actually prematurely die or you age quicker. So Kiko would always say, from her experiences clinically, and as a master, she would say that if you treat the small intestine, it's like the fountain of youth of your body. It's like a hidden secret. And she's proven it as far as people with Crohn's disease. And if you met anybody with Crohn's disease, they may not look physically old, but they could be in their 20s and they feel and act and think old. I mean, cloudy thoughts. You think about all of the symptomology behind it. And I treated that in the past for many years. And I've seen it reverse 100% with just the Kiko style of acupuncture, without even going into the esoteric side, just based on the small intestine theory. Just based on strengthening the energetics or the frequency of trying to bring back the electricity and the magnetism of the small intestine for whatever reason it was that ended up that way. Could be through genetic predisposition, but it could also have been through the lifestyles and the patterns of the person's etiology or the pathomechanics of their diagnosis, as an example. And the way it arrived there is different to everyone. And as I start to treat the small intestine channel as an example in the most basic way, after 1 or 2 or 3 months, symptoms of Crohn's disease, right, small intestine, would start to diminish anywhere from 20 to 30 to 50 to 70 to 90%, depending on the person. And oftentimes, person came to me twice a week for like 3 months. They forget that they have Crohn's disease, honestly. I forget that they have it because we're treating them for other things, because we're no longer even treating a symptom. It's just completely remission. It's like they just like live like it's fine. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's complete remission. And it actually stands. It actually stands, you know. So you can argue the small intestine could be repressing and holding. It's not always just the liver. But as an organ, the small intestine might be repressing something that the colon cannot let go of. So large intestine is about letting go of your shit, but it's also letting go of things in your life the same way. So your colon doesn't know the difference as far as external stimuli and situations and experiences into your actual somatic system, into your nervous system, and it's connected to your organs the same, right? So your colon may still be holding something because there's a lesson that you need to be received, or you're afraid of letting go of that person because that person betrayed you, or whatnot. Or maybe you're the one doing it, as an example, and you know that you should let them go because you're just like, you know, the lesson's already complete and the person doesn't know how to release you. And as an example, you keep holding on. So now you start having colon issues, right? But maybe your colon doesn't even have the issues, it's your small intestine, because the small intestine's like, Ave Maria, the colon is not going to be able to handle it. Colon's going to end up with cancer. So now the small intestine is holding it. Now you have IBS. You're having actual systemic issues that quite commonly in the small intestine, and now it starts pouring and starts backing up into the pericardium, which is the bilayer tissue around the heart. So it's like protecting the heart by all means, because the heart is like the emperor of your whole entire vessel. So it's like protecting the queen or the king. This is like the house that resides your spirit, man. You know. And in most extreme cases, when the person's ready to check out in life and they all give up, that's when they end up with cardiovascular diseases as they get older. Small intestine just got, you know, heartbreak. I mean, my grandpa, I mean, you can argue not to get into it, but I mean, he lived to be in his 93, 94 years old. I miss him dearly. And arguably he died because of broken heart syndrome, because my grandma passed away 4 or 5 years prior. And I know that he suffered every single day in his life, because they've been married for like crazy 67 years of his life, since he was 27 or something like that. And I really believe that he knew the day he was going to go. He was ready to go, man. He was ready to check out. There's like a picture that I have of him sitting the day before he died, like as if he was waiting for the bus in the hospital. And he had his legs crossed and he was reading the newspaper. You know, his glasses, beautiful white silver hair. And it was like he was ready. I saw that like months after his passing. And in his case, I don't want to say that was a celebration, but he was ready to go, man. But it shows you how once it arrives towards the housing of your spirit, it means that your spirit's ready to graduate and to let go. But down here we see it as trauma, and we're afraid to complete. Just like the small intestine should not be holding information, so we can learn a lot from the small intestine, because the small intestine is not about holding, it's about complete flow, complete assimilation. And when the going gets tough, and when it stagnates, you have to have this most real, intimate conversation with yourself and speak to your small intestine, just like you speak to your heart. It's not separate. Now you know, and if you didn't, you can't say you don't.